Hey, what's up? This is PRP3 The Author, and I want to talk about playing the waiver wire for beginners, because beginners really don't know what to do when it comes to the waiver wire. They don't know what it's about. They don't know when to access it, and you don't know what the waiver wire is. Now, the waiver wire is after your draft is finished, after all you and all your friends pick all your players, well, all the other players in the NFL who weren't drafted by any of your 10, 12, 14 members of your league, they go to the waiver wire, and they're pretty much locked after the draft until until that first week opens up for the first week's games. And then you'll see that there's players available. Now, you may have drafted someone who you probably shouldn't have drafted. They're injured, or they're suspended, like indefinitely it's suspended. They're not coming back this season. So what you can do is go to players on any of the platforms you play on, and you can search for a replacement wide receiver, or replacement running back, or replacement kicker or defense. And let's say you picked up a defense, you auto drafted, or you just picked up a defense because it's your team, but then you really think about it and they don't really have a good defense, and you want to get a new team. So you can go to the waiver wire and pick up these people. And as long as the games haven't started yet, they're all considered free agents. So you can pick them up in any order. You don't have to wait for someone else to go. Just go there and replace players as you need. Now, you need to be careful playing the waiver wire. You don't always have to swap people out every week, drop people, pick people up, because this is the beginning of, if you're watching this, it's probably the beginning of a league, the beginning of a football season, and you don't want to make panic picks and like drop players who had a bad game or two, but then everything kind of equals out after the players kind of start getting the feel back. So you might drop someone who's going to be really good later on in the season. So just be careful playing the waiver wire. It's not something you don't want to drop players that you're going to regret dropping later, unless you have injuries. Then you need to cover for that. So look at the waiver wire before the week starts and see if there's any players that you need to replace on your team. Now, one thing people look at are projections. Like they might see that you can project the whole season and see how much a player is projected to get, and you're thinking, wow, that running back is going to have a great season according to the projection. Let me go ahead and drop my, one of my wide receivers and pick up that running back. Well, just because they're projected to do well doesn't always mean that they will do well. So, and another thing is, the waiver wire will close after the games start on Thursday. That those two teams that play, that their players lock. After the Sunday games, as those games start, the players will lock. Monday night, before that game opens up, you'll have players from those two teams playing available. But as soon as the game starts, they lock, and you won't be able to get players until Wednesday after the week's games are finished. So one problem that beginners run into is they start looking at, like, let's say this is the first week, and they might have Antonio Brown or Odell Beckham, or just like any number of big players, like Le'Veon Bell, these star power names, and those guys may not have done well on week one, so they're panicking, and they're like, oh, but look at this running back, or look at this wide receiver, they got 30 points, 20 points, 18 points. Let me pick them up. And it's like the fourth wide receiver on the team, and they're thinking, okay, this person's going to give me a lot of points, like Antonio Brown, this is not his year. No, you be very careful when it comes to that, because a lot of these players, like I said, they're getting their feet back. They're shaking the rust off. They're playing again for the first time in a year. They took it easy in preseason, and defense might not be playing that well. The offensive line might not be playing that well. The quarterback just might be off one week, and you're thinking, well, let me pick up this backup wide receiver, and he's going to be the new person, the new top number one wide receiver. And next week, that person might get 0 points. And for all the other weeks after that, he might get 2 points, 3 points, 1 point. So you have to be very careful when playing the waiver wire. And you're looking at all these guys like, oh, he scored a lot, let me pick him up. And what you're doing at this point is you're chasing last week's points, hoping that they can replicate it, and then next week and the weeks afterwards, you're going to get those points. And that's not always the case. You know, look at the Cowboys. You'll see Des Bryant, and then you'll see Cole Beasley, and you're thinking, okay, Des is a guy to get. You draft him, but Cole Beasley got more catches, more receptions in the first game, and you're like, okay, well, you know, let me pick up Cole Beasley and I'll bench Des because Cole's going to be the go-to guy. Well, no, some games it's going to happen. You know, if they're going up against a team and, you know, the team moves their cornerbacks to, you know, to shadow the good wide receiver, if they double, triple cover that wide receiver, well, they're going to have a bad game. But, you know, you never know. The next game, the defense could be doing man coverage. And, you know, Des might be able to break that cover and get a bunch of touchdowns. And then Cole Beasley might get a couple of check down catches. And you're going to be very, very upset because you may have dropped someone who's going to do well much better later on. But you won't be able to have that person because someone else is going to pick them up on the waiver wire. And there's one more thing I wanted to talk about the waiver wire. It's the waiver wire order. Because a lot of people will look at players and they'll say, okay, this player's having a fantastic game. Let me pick them up. That way I can have them next week. So what's going to happen is that when they look at the waiver wire, they're going to be locked. But you can still pick up someone as a conditional pick, I guess you can call it. And as soon as the waiver wire opens on Wednesday night, late at night, or very early morning, what's going to happen is if multiple people want to pick that same player up, they're going to look at the waiver wire order, and then that goes off of your draft order for your league. So you'll look at that by your standings, and you'll see like waiver wire order, you might be number 2. So if you and number 1 want to pick up that player, number 1's going to get that player. You're going to get and then if you made another waiver wire pick, you'll probably get that next pick. It all depends on how many people want to get any number of players that week and what waiver wire order they're in. So you have to keep that in mind. And when you do that, you pick someone up conditionally and you get them, that resets you back to number 10. So the next week, if there's a really breakout player, you know, a handcuff, a backup running back that is shining, and then the starting running back is hurt and he's out for the rest of the season. Well, if you want to pick up that running back, well, it's going to give everyone else 1 through 9 that option before you can get it if everyone tries to pick that person up. So you got to be careful. If you don't pick people up while they're conditionally locked, and everyone else does, that puts you at number 1 for the waiver wire order. So that might be something to look at. For me, I try not to make panic picks. What I'll do is I'll let the waiver wire open, and then I'll look for available free agents, because like I said, your starters that you drafted at the beginning of the year are pretty much going to be the starters that you have throughout. Now, there are going to be bad games, there are going to be good games. Hopefully you have a good bench. You drafted well, and you got good players you can pick up from your bench and put them up in your starting position. But if you need to go to the waiver wire, go to it. Just keep in mind the waiver wire order. Keep in mind that blocks pick and they open up at certain times after the game's finished for that week. Keep in mind that one good week doesn't equate a NFL breakout star if that person's been in the league 2-3 years and they just had a good game during their first week. It happens all the time. I've been looking at my league, and I see people were picking up players that were really good. They picked up a lot of points during their first week, but you know that they're on teams with like Des Bryant, Odell Beckham Jr., Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, and you know that those guys are the main ones who the quarterbacks are mainly looking for. And those guys who did well, those fourth string wide receivers, they're going to go back to just blocking and being open or covered on routes and not really getting many receptions. So play the waiver wire and look out for players on the waiver wire, because sometimes there are breakout stars where You know, a person just might have a great year, and you could pick them up, and it will probably be helpful. But not everyone is going to have a great year. You just need to kind of do a little research, read some news articles, check out Twitter, check out the different what different experts are saying about that player, if they are going to have a breakout year or not. Because if he's not, then you're wasting the pick. So beginners, be careful. The waiver wire is very it's very tempting. You're looking at projections, you're thinking this second string running back for pass heavy team is projected to do very well. I need that person. No, projections are projections. Sometimes they meet, sometimes they don't meet. So keep that in mind. And like and subscribe, and check out my next video.